My name is Agnes. I live in a cottage on the edge of the village of Washington, at the foot of the downs where the green sand turns into clay. The lane that leads past the cottage is narrow and muddy, and floods with a milky whiteness when the rain pours down from the hill. Above us, the scarp is thickly wooded, up to the open chalk tops where the sheep graze. My father's family have been in Sussex for years. I am 17. We are quite often hungry. I work half of the day weaving cloth for the trade. And for the remainder, I do what girls do. Stir the pots, feed the hens, slap the wind from the babies, make soap, make threepence go further. My brother is whetting the blades by the back door. I see the knife catching the shine of the orange sun as he works, a sharp flash of blinding light. I always knew that I wanted to write about fire, the idea of fire, the element fire. And I also always had Agnes right from the start. She was a very kind of strong presence in my mind. And I wasn't entirely sure how the two things would marry up. And then I was at a bonfire display in a small town on Dartmoor, and it sort of came to me as a flash of inspiration, really, that fireworks would provide the kind of chemistry for the two to come together. I also had a passion for fireworks as a child. The village where I grew up in Sussex, 5th of November was an important event. The man who ran the local shop used to make his own fireworks, and they were very loud, erratic, probably incredibly dangerous. Even as a child, I found that sort of an incredibly exciting, subversive sort of idea. And I also lived for a while in Spain, where the Spanish do fabulous, spectacular firework displays. And I think if you come across those kind of things at a certain point in your life, in your childhood, it kind of gets into your blood. I knew absolutely nothing about pyrotechny before I started, and I certainly had no idea that the search for coloured fireworks was so difficult and so sought after. Before the end of the 18th century, fireworks were basically white. There was a sort of certain range of colours between warmth and cold. Amber colour was probably the strongest colour that was possible, which was made by adding burning tails of charcoal and iron filings to the mixture. By the sort of late 18th century, potassium chlorate was discovered, which enabled coloured fireworks to be made. So I sort of think Agnes would have been older and more experienced by the time coloured fireworks were available to be used. I found the chemistry quite difficult to grapple with at first, not least because some of the manuals of sort of early 19th century fireworks that I was looking at in the British Library were often wrong, so I had to constantly check my facts as I went along. It was really important to get the details right, and it was also really important to get the larger kind of chunks of fact right, the bigger picture. And it was that sort of middle ground between the two that I felt it was fine for me to invent, to kind of expand on things, to sort of furnish with my imagination. Authenticity is key, but it's also really important not to compromise your story or your set of ideas. Agnes grew directly out of the downland landscape, the Sussex countryside where she grew up, and where in fact she returns to in her mind and in her dreams throughout the story. There's something about her which is like the sort of uncompromising kind of solidness, the large kind of plain beauty of the downs. She's also a very undemonstrative kind of private sort of person, and she's a very moral kind of person, and I think the story is at least partly about her struggle with her conscience as much as it is about her dilemma. And the story is also about luck, and it's about the small chance encounters which can change the course of a life. London today is very different to the London that I wrote about in the 18th century in the BookOfFires, but it's always been a melting pot of cultures, of lifestyles, and somehow it's always had that kind of seediness and that glamour and the wealth and poverty rubbing shoulders side by side. And there are some districts in the city down by the river where you can almost feel a kind of air sort of crackling with the past, really. It feels just a whisker away. I'm always really aware that there are traces of the dead everywhere, all around us. I think about that all the time.